In Italy, the situation is more or less, I would say, in line with Germany. Again, it's a race to the bottom, unfortunately. Yeah, because someone telling us that the Germany is in a worse shape compared to Italy. Other people telling me that Italy is in a worse shape compared to the German situation. But even if you look at the non-paper of, the Commission, the European Commission, then we all can say that both Germany and Italy are in the red zone.
I also wanted to touch upon the sort of discussion of the political backdrop in Italy heading into this energy crisis. Most people in the global investment community will probably know the last Prime Minister Mario Draghi from his time at the European Central Bank, right? But he's no longer running for office in the upcoming election, I mean, it seems as if there are sort of plenty of scenarios in play ahead of this election. So, what's your take on sort of the political situation heading into this election and the spillovers to this energy crisis?
About the political situation, I don't think right now it really mattered a
Mm,
lot in the financial markets environment. This is my idea. Think about some indicators. Okay, think about the spread, for
mm,
example, between our BTP and our bond. They have been pretty stable around 220, 225. So a really different situation compared to the European government, crisis in 2011, 2012. So again, even if we talk about the bond market, you see the bond today close to 2%, the 10-year bond, and you see our BTP just close to 4%, but this was related, I think, more related to, for
mm.
example, yesterday PPI in Germany, the Purchase Producer Index. So again, the inflation, we all have the inflation from 8 to 10% compared to the different, countries. So again, my point is that right now, the actual debate and the political situation had not a huge impact in financial market. This is the first point. The second point is related to the fact that the economic backdrop for now, as it is not that bad. I do think it will get worse down the road, especially in Q4. This is my idea. But as our Prime Minister Mario Draghi told us a couple of days ago, before, then he told us, but yeah, at the end of the day, we are not yet in the recession. We already had 3.5% of GDP growth already in 2022. And so right now, I cannot see a huge recession down the road. Again, this is related to the GDP. On the other side, Andreas, we have some kind of, you know, uh, macros indicators that we need to take into account, especially for the next government. And those are related to the deficit with GDP that for 2022 is close to 6%, and on the other side the debt on GDP that is higher than 150%. Why those indicators are important for the next government? Because obviously, since you cannot put those cap in energy world like we discussed, then maybe there are some parties calling from
Mm.
a huge government intervention. Okay, but if we, for example, like someone calling right now a 30 billion euro help for firms or for consumers, maybe you well know what I'm referring to, then it's difficult for us to, for example, add 30 billion euros each month, because on the one side there is the risk to go close to 8% on deficit GDP. On the other side, if we have a collapse of the growth on Q1 2023, for example, we can have a debt of GDP higher than 160%. And so maybe, Andreas, is not the best framework for the next government. And on the other side, maybe ECB should jump into our situation.
Yeah, at least that is what some people fear ahead of this winter if Italy needs the support from the European Central Bank again at a time of very high inflation. But one of the scenarios that I get a lot of questions on at Real Vision is the scenario of a right wing government being formed in Italy after the election. So we have this woman called Giorgia Meloni. She's the head of the party called the Brotherhood of Italy. I think that's the English translation of Fratelli d'Italia, right? And I mean, we've seen a lot of articles around the possibility of her being the next prime minister in the media. Sorry. So what do you make of this election? Is it a possible scenario, or what's sort of the scenarios ahead of us here?
Yeah, I do think, Andreas, that this is the most likely scenario. So we all think here that I would say the far right, because there is, at the end of the day, the coalition with, the more center right with Berlusconi and even with Salvini as well, that is the Lega one. Maybe at the end of the day, there will be this kind of coalition. But the most likely outcome will be Giorgia Meloni as the next prime minister right now. So again, which will be the consequences of that? Again, on the energy side, if you ask me, then I can tell you my opinion. Not will change. You will not have a lot of changes, because at the end of the day, it's very difficult that you can take some decision, for example, related to the cap alone. You will have to join the European Union in any kind of decision. Otherwise, it will be a disaster for a single country. So this is my perception. At the end of the day, a lot of public campaign, a lot of talks, but I'm not sure they will do, something without Europe. And this is from the energy side. But on the Italia side, I would say on macro side, then the public campaign told me that they want to spend. They want to spend a lot. Think about the potential flat tax, or think about, they want to do a lot of investments. And so the public spending, I'm okay with that, but I am not sure that I have a lot of covering for that. And this is my, what I'm thinking right now. So they win the public spend, but, the problem with the deficit and the debt to GDP will be higher. I have also to be honest, over the last 3 to 4 weeks, the same Giorgia Meloni tried to, reassure the market, telling them that we are not stupid, and we well know that we need to stay within the European framework. So I do think that at the end of the day, they will make those decisions within the EU framework. Otherwise, we go back to the previous point and the two protection, the TPI, so the to protect Italy mechanism, we all called it in Italy. So the TPI instrument, for the ECB could come in action. That's the point, Andreas.
Yeah, I also think that is a clearly a potential scenario already for this winter. I wanted to ask for your take on some of the comments made by Matteo Salvini, who's the head of the Northern League Party. I think that's the English translation of Lega Nord. He's been quite vocal in the media in recent weeks around the sanctions on Russia, right? He's basically debating whether the European Union would be better off lifting those sanctions in order to be able to buy Russian natural gas again. Is that a discussion that is part of the political debate in Italy ahead of this election?
Well, this is really a difficult situation, Andres. I thought about this question down the last, couple of days as well. Again, I don't think this will be at the center of the public debate. There were some documents we read that tried to rule out the impact of the Russia, overall political situation on Italy. And, during the last couple of days, and even, I would say the last week or so, Salvini tries to, get a distance, with Putin. Even yesterday, he told that, was for once, 3 to 4 years ago, I was a friend of Putin because he was a good guy and so on. But after the war, then he's no more my friend, So more or less, this is the last debate and the last relationship between Salvini and Russia at all. I wouldn't say that this is the center of the Italian debate right now. It's more related to the flat tax. It's more related to the cap. It's more related to the fact that the new government will have to help the firms and even with the budget. But is in the framework, is in the background, and I cannot say no on that. But if you ask me, Andreas, if, for example, Salvini wins, no? He can, have a tie alliance with Putin, then again, my answer is no, because, at the end of the day, the situation is completely different compared to what we had in 2011. Here we have a good support from a good support for euro and for European Union. And so I don't want they want to lose some kind of sharing and some kind of voting just to, leave Europe on the other side or going into a kind of Italexit like we had in 2011. So I do think they will, in any case, act within the European Union framework.
I've been trying to sort of calculate the overall size of the bill of this energy crisis across the various European countries in recent days. And it is tricky to come up with a very precise number. But as far as I can calculate, it seems as if the energy cost as a percent of the gross domestic product is now around 8 to 10% of GDP in most European countries. What do you think will happen in Italian politics with this bill? Because someone obviously has to pay, right? Will it be the public sector, the private sector? Who takes the bill here?
Yeah, and again, like in the natural gas market, Andreas, unfortunately, I have not solutions because we need to think about that. At the end of the day, during the last 10 years, we had a high concentration risk, no? And so we cannot solve in 6 months a situation that has been generated over the last, 10 years. But if you ask me right now, what we can do and what the next government can do or will do, I wouldn't guess that, they just need to give money to all. Because if they give money to all firms, people, consumer households, then, the deficit to GDP, like you said, will skyrocket. And we cannot, Italy is not in the right place to, afford it. So at the end of the day, maybe they can target the low income population, like Mario Draghi is doing right now, in order to get a direct financing. Because if we talk about the other, I would define exotic plan, like the the subsidies of natural gas, electricity power, or like the TOPE in Spain and in Portugal situation, or, the cap on the renewables revenues, then all those measures in Italy will be very difficult to apply because we have a lot of interconnections with other, countries. And so we are not in the same position of Spain and Portugal, for example. And so if you ask me, the new government, what should do, maybe targeting some support to low income, households and maybe some firms. But what we'll do, I do think that they will support all the firms and all the households, and there will be a difficult moment to get through the winter, especially if we go into a higher range of the debt to GDP level.
Hey there, revolutionaries. To join a community sharing professional insights like what you just watched, head over to realvision.com and get unbiased insights and exclusive access to the very best, brightest, and biggest names in finance. Join our community of lifelong learners.